Okay, let me show you something. We are on this website. We can just click here and download an app. We can then open this installer image and just drag and drop the app to the applications folder. What we did now is we downloaded an app from the web, installed it on Apple hardware, and it just worked. There was no human that needed to decide if that is allowed or if it's not allowed to install this app. And on the iPhone, that is not possible. And I don't think that the reason for that is security, because how this works on the Mac is actually very simple. Every time a developer has an app that they want to send to the users, they want to distribute it, they send it to Apple to do a process called notarization. In that process, there is no human at Apple that checks the binary of the app. Instead, they run automated checks on the binary. So a computer is doing that fully automated to check if there are signatures of known malware. And if there are signatures of known malware, of course, the notarization gets rejected. If everything is fine, the app just gets a thumbs up. It's fine to install it on other computers. It even gets like a little receipt that you can staple literally onto the app. And then when a user downloads the app, like I just did that with Tulip here as an example, my Mac asks Apple if it's okay to open this app, if it's safe, because this app is already in Apple's database and it can just open it. Now compare this to how this works on the App Store for the iPhone. The developer has to send an app to Apple, and then they have to go through their, I don't know how many pages of guidelines of what an app can do and cannot do. So basically, Apple is deciding with human review for every app and every app update if an app is allowed to be downloaded via the App Store or not, which, because the App Store currently in most countries of the world is the only solution to get software onto an iPhone, is fully controlled by Apple, which means that Apple can decide what is possible on their devices and what not. And also that every piece of software that runs on an iPhone has to go through a human reviewer at Apple. I think that is totally fine if there would be something comparable to how notarization on the Mac works, where there's no human reviewer involved, there are no guidelines. I can just make software for an iPhone, send it to Apple for notarization, and then it gets installed. Now, let's say it turns out that something is wrong with the software that I created, or the software is in fact malware, but it slipped through the notarization. What Apple then can do, and this is already how it works on the Mac, they can just revoke this notarization. So the next time I open the app, Gatekeeper asks Apple, hey, is it fine to open the app? And Apple can just say no, and then it's just not possible to open the app anymore. Users will get a scary message saying something is wrong with the app, it includes malware or whatever, you cannot just open it anymore. Now, what about security and people that are maybe a little bit less technical? Well, for them, I think nothing would change, because let's say my mom would download an app and she always will use the App Store because she has no idea how to do this via web browser. It's the same on the Mac. There are people that own a Mac, but they only download software via the App Store, which is completely fine. Which means non-technical people are still a little bit more protected than technical people, because they only download something from the App Store compared to something from a website. In my opinion, a device that I own should be open so that I can install on it whatever I want to. I think it is a huge problem that currently this is not possible on iPhone and some other Apple devices, where Apple still can say what I can install and what not by doing their human review. I would much more prefer if I could just download software like I can do on the Mac, just via a website, download it, it installs it on my iPhone. I know it's already notarized by Apple. They checked it for malware. They say there is no malware. I can just open it and everything is fine. Whenever they find malware, they can still protect me. They can revoke the access to the app and just say, this is not safe, you can use it. Apple claims that this is a bad idea because this is a safety and security issue, because it means bad actors can spread really bad apps that other people will install on their phones. I would argue that this is already happening, even though there is the App Store with human review. We have seen this a bunch of times. There have been examples of crypto scams and other gambling scams that are actually against Apple's guidelines, but they still slip through. So my theory why Apple doesn't want this is very plainly money. Their guidelines and the human review guarantees that the only money that flows through the App Store is through Apple through their in-app purchases, because this is one of the App Store guidelines where Apple decides that as a developer you can only use Apple's in-app purchases as a payment provider, except for some exceptions. But most of the money they make is obviously through these in-app purchases. If you now would be able to just download an app from the web and then pay on the web or through any other means, it would mean that Apple doesn't get a cut. We can see Apple fighting against this, for example, in the EU, where the EU has the initiative of opening up these digital markets and trying to force Apple to open up their platform, but Apple tries to still get a cut of the money that flows through apps that are distributed outside of the App Store. If we look closely, they just show their true colors. They say it's for security, they say it's for the safety of their users, but in the end, it's all just about money. In my opinion, a phone is a computer, and you should be able to install any software that you want, even if you made it yourself on your own computer without any other human having to give it your okay that you can install this software on your computer.